Good morning, good morning. Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, superheroes out there. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Saturday Leadership Lab. My name is Earl Mann. I am the host of this conversation today. This is a weekly class we do to facilitate a communication, a workshop or discussion on ideas to help you in your quest for increasing your personal power, your personal ability to perform in different areas of your life. Montreal, welcome to the broadcast. First person to say hello to me this morning is International. Good morning, Diane. Welcome to the broadcast. I see we have a few people tuning in. As always, we'd like to welcome everybody to this broadcast. This is just a moment we share with the world. There's no call to action here. There's nothing to join, nothing to buy. Don't worry about anything like that. We're not selling anything, but we are selling the idea that there are different things that you can adopt in your personal life, in your planning, in your strategy that can be very beneficial. So that's what we sell here. We're selling an idea. But we hope you buy it, because if you do, you'd be buying it from yourself, applying it for yourself, and using it on yourself. So again, my name is Earl Mann. We're going to get started here in just a moment. See lots of people tuning in. As always, you can let me know who you are, or you can just sit back and be a fly on the wall. These broadcasts, these workshops are of varying length. Sometimes we go 10 minutes, sometimes a half an hour, and sometimes sometime in between. Today we have a simple idea. It's going to be a short one. It's a simple idea we like to share that we think would be very helpful to some people in bringing some of their daily activities and perspective into focus. So what we're going to talk about today is one path to dramatically improving your personal power. And the good news about the way we work this workshop is we let you put the definitions around a framework. So when we say it's going to give you personal power, we hope that this is so fundamental that regardless of how you define power, it will still apply. As always, we'd like to encourage you to take some notes as we go along. Many of things that what we do here is pretty much provide the framework so that you can kind of write down the framework, understand how you can apply this session, but you can come back to it after the broadcast, and in your own time and at your own pace, fill in the blanks. So the purpose of this workshop isn't necessarily to be for you to go through all the details that we're going to prescribe, as much as it is for you to just understand what we're talking about, the concept, and understand how you can do this as a personal workshop and filling all the blanks in excruciating detail. That's the plan. So welcome, John. Welcome to the broadcast. Kim, welcome to the broadcast. Mike, welcome to the broadcast. Don't know where people are tuning in from other than Diane from Montreal. You're the only person that said where you're tuning in from to hear today. So today we're going to jump right in. And I'm going to start today's session off with some, just giving you the results of some research that was done. So some research that was done, I think I originally heard about this from Brian Tracy. If you know who he is, you know he's a guy that spent over 20 years studying people and studying how people perform, especially in the areas of sales and entrepreneurship. But one of the studies he shares often, and he came across through his personal work, is the study in which they went out and they tried to find, through scientific means, what were some of the characteristics shared in common that were shared by high-performing sales and business types, mostly sales, but high-performing salespeople. What were some of the core characteristics that they all shared in common? And I'm going to come just share the results of that with you. So one of the strategies that I often encourage is to make yourself aware and to become a student of people, to become a student of human beings and human behavior, ultimately to become a massive student of yourself, understanding you. The better understanding you can get on you and how you work and why, then you can use some of that knowledge to adjust that understanding. You can use that knowledge to your own benefit. Not only does understanding humanity or understanding how people work, not only does that become a useful tool in helping you interact with others, it becomes a very powerful tool in you just understanding yourself and how you might apply these ideas to your navigation through this world. So they did this experiment on people, and one of the things they found to be kind of the standout quality amongst all these high-performing people, the standout quality, one of the things that stood out more than any other thing were those people's self-perception. Most of those people had a very high degree of self-esteem, a very high degree of self-esteem. We're going to re-language that a bit to make it easy to talk about and conversate. Another way they put it was those people that perceived. Those people that perceived. I want you to write down that word perceived if you're writing this down. Those people that perceived themselves to have the larger control over their environment, those people by far performed better than other people. But another thing they found, and this is the thing that really caught my attention, that when they measured these people for self-defined happiness, when they gave these people questionnaires and they did all these psychological tests and they asked these people to rate their level of happiness, how, as arbitrary as that might seem, they were able to put together a test or a questionnaire that people could define what happiness was from their own perspective and then rate their level of happiness. When they did this across a very large group of people and they looked at the results, lo and behold, something jumped out to them as well. The same thing. Those people with the highest perceived control over their environment also had the highest degree of self-defined happiness. So let that one idea sink in for you a moment. I want you to write that down and think about it. Those people that perceive. Remember the word I told you to underline and circle. Perceived. Those people that perceived themselves to have a larger influence or control over their environment outperformed people that didn't have that same perception, and also seemed to be happier than those that didn't have that perception. Let that sink in. Let that sink in a little bit. Now, if we just take the results of that experiment at face value, what does that tell us about the possibility of our current position in business, in life, in entrepreneurship endeavors, in sales if you're in sales? What possibilities does that open up? So, this is going to be the workshop for today. One is, the biggest part of the workshop is just to understand that fact. Understand that idea. Doesn't even have to be a fact. Just understand that idea. Understand that there is a relationship between perceived control on both performance and happiness. So, what's one way, knowing this, the question I have for you is, what's one way to instantly increase your perception of control? You know what one is? One of the most common ways to do that? Have a plan. Have a detailed plan. Now, let's look at what creating a detailed plan does for you. Beyond the obvious. Beyond the obvious. Because the obvious thing a detailed plan does for you is it shows you a way to logically get someplace. It shows you a way to accomplish a task. It makes visible a path that you can take to get something done, make something happen. That's the obvious benefit of a plan. So, given that experiment, what's the non-obvious benefit of a plan? It's really obvious. One is, if you can see the logical path to make something happen, that gives you control over making it happen. And if you can see that or perceive that, you instantly become better at it, right? Based upon the anecdotal evidence from that experiment. Now, how do you feel about your chances of getting that done? How do you feel in general about everything? What's your general level of happiness when you think about this thing you want to accomplish or this thing you want to this thing you want to do? Well, according to the evidence from that experiment, you will feel happier about it because you now can see or perceive your ability to control the outcome. So my question to you is, what if, big question mark, what if one of the real reasons you need to have a detailed plan on how something is going to happen is both the obvious, so you can see the natural path to get there, but equally as important, the non-obvious. The non-obvious. So that you can perform at a level required to make it happen. So that you can feel good about even going down this path, that you can stick with it. Let me pause for a second and let you digest that idea. Write it down. Given this idea, what implications does that have on your personal plans, on your personal goals? Okay, I'm going to give you one other experiment to back up this same little simple fundamental idea. This experiment, which the first time I heard about this experiment, I heard it from a person that was they were speaking at a conference that was trying to explain the science behind the Montessori method of education. And there's a book out there called The Genius Behind Montessori. I think that's the name of the book. Anyway, it was the author of that book that was explaining some of the science behind the method of the Montessori path to education. And she shared this experiment with the audience. And I'm going to now share this with you, and then you should see why it's related to this conversation. So this was the experiment. They invited some adults into a room, and the adults knew that we're going to be a part of an experiment. They just didn't know what. You know how sneaky psychologists can be. So they invited adults into this room, and they handed out anagrams. Anagrams are these very hard puzzles to figure out that take a lot of concentration, a lot of focus and concentration to figure out. And all the people knew that they were going to be part of some type of test that involved them figuring out these hard logic problems that was going to require focus and concentration. But when they brought everybody in the room, the administrator in front of the room said, look, they made this announcement. They said, thanks everybody for being a part of this experiment. We appreciate your time. Unfortunately, there was a schedule conflict, and we have to have people work on the fire alarm at the same time that we have this class scheduled, this experiment scheduled. We really want to get both done. So there's a chance that the fire alarm might go off. And if it does, we know that might be a little distracting, so we're going to leave it up to you. If it is too distracting for you to concentrate, just let us know, and we will tell the repair people they're going to have to come back another day. That's going to create a lot of problems for us, and we really don't want to do that. But if you can't concentrate, just let us know, and we will do that. But we really want you to try, if you can, just to drive through. If it happens, just drive through and not force us to reschedule that. Okay. So sure enough, they began the test, and people started working through these puzzles, and about halfway through them working the puzzle, sure enough, the alarm went off, and it was an annoying sound. And it was a very annoying sound, but the people kind of just, they didn't tell us to stop. They didn't tell the experiment people to cut it off. They just sucked it up and went on through it, and they did it anyway. Okay, then they took those tests. Okay, then they brought in a different group of people. But this time, this was the announcement they gave to the second group. They said, look, thanks for coming out. We appreciate you working with this experiment. Unfortunately, this is the only time we can do the experiment, and this is the only time we can do the repair on the fire alarm. So it's going to go off probably, but if it does, unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. So just do the best you can on your tests. We understand that it might be slightly distracting. We try to factor that in. We just wanted to apologize in advance. So they had that course. They had that second group go through. Alarm went off. They finished all the tests and went through it. Now they did this repeatedly with different groups. One group had the choice, the power, the perceived power to tell them to cut the sound off. The other group was powerless, was nothing they could do about it. And when they compared the results of these two groups, overwhelmingly, the people that had the perceived ability to cut the alarm off, even though they didn't, outperformed the people that had the perception that they had no control over that environment. They killed them. They outperformed them repeatedly in this experiment. So the anecdotal evidence from this experiment is that those people that perceived they had control over their environment, they perceived that they had the ability to raise their hand and said, hey, we can't concentrate with this noise, cut it off. Even though they didn't take that action, even though they didn't act on that power, they just knew they had the power, they outperformed the people that didn't have the perception that they couldn't control their environment. Let that sink in. Hopefully you see now that that supports this same idea of planning that we talked about. The non-obvious, beyond the obvious value of planning, right? So now, with that idea in mind and with that experiment in mind, now I want you to think about the simple idea of writing down a detailed plan, and I want you to think about, based on that experiment, what power can you draw from writing a detailed plan that goes beyond the obvious? Let that sink in for a moment. Write down whatever notes you want to write down. Now, this is what I want you to take away from this workshop. This is really a workshop on the power of planning, but I'm hoping you see, I want you to focus on the power of planning beyond the obvious. We all know, and we all seen books written, and we all see people talk about it all the time. Everybody talks about why you need to have a plan, and everybody talks about are you working a plan. If you're not planning to win, if you're not, planning to win, you are planning to fail. All those things make sense, but I think most people only look at the value of a plan for the obvious benefit. So now I'm going to try to open your mind up to consider this huge potential non-obvious benefit of having a plan. And based upon, as my interpretation of just these two experiments, and I could tell you half a dozen more, but just based on these two experiments, it seems to me that having a plan will both give me an increased amount of personal power. It will possibly increase my real ability, cognitive ability, on attention and focus and ability to problem solve. And the third one is the one I really want you to focus on. I might just feel happier about the whole thing. And guys, I gotta tell you, if I can feel empowered, if I can feel capable, if I can perform at a high level, and be smarter and happier along the way, that, my friends, is worth taking my ideas and writing them down in the form of a plan. That's it. That does it for this workshop today. Hopefully you got something out of this. As always, share these ideas with people that you think might benefit from them. We do this on most Saturdays unless I'm traveling. And if we'd like, we may have the ability to really dig into some of these different workshops and really expand these ideas. But the Saturday workshop is just designed to give you something interesting and could be powerful to think about. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.